I'm going to talk a little bit about the high costs of doing business in a rural area. Again, my name is John. I'm proud superintendent of Weed Union Elementary School District. And in my previous experience, I also had the privilege of serving the Hupa, the Karuk, and the Yurok nations over in Humboldt and Trinity counties, both very rural school districts. And both, as panelists have described, I would even use the word deplorable conditions of school districts that were built in the 30s and 40s that unfortunately haven't had a chance to be maintained and no longer meet the needs. Hit with severe black mold, leaks, as well as seismic and structural complications where our kids were being served. To rebuild in a rural area, it actually has a significantly higher cost. These areas aren't located in the populous area where you would have certified contractors. And when I say certified, meaning can do DSA work and also be on DIR to do the prevailing wage that is required to do public works projects. So these contractors must come from out of town. And when you come from out of town, because of the requirements of prevailing wage and meeting some of the union requirements, the contractors get paid for what we call windshield time. They get paid for the travel time. So in an 8-hour workday, these contractors will drive at least 1 hour one way to come meet the needs in a rural. So we pay them prevailing wage to be in the windshield time. They'll give us 6 hours worth of work and then turn around and drive an hour home. So those costs right there are already 25% higher because I'm getting only about a 75% of the workday involved with it and paying 100% of the cost. In addition, you can consider the shipping costs and everything associated with getting those materials to there is significantly higher. The state has a system that they bump up the increase for small rural of about 5%, but that does not match the actual costs that we experience in rural and doing the construction here. As Dr. Hardy was saying, and as Bree was saying, in some of the areas that we serve, with lower socioeconomic status, and that's the populations that I'm serving, there is a mechanism within the state called a financial hardship, where the state will help you and pick up that matching cost. As John was saying earlier, there's a 60-40 and a modernization, 60 on the state side, 40 on the community side. And in a new construction, it's a 50-50. And then if you qualify for a financial hardship, and the way they define a financial hardship is that you're 60%, the districts contributed 60% of their bonding capacity, you qualify for a financial hardship, where the state picks up both sides. But when Dr. Hardy said a systemic racial inequity, I'm going to give you the data to actually back the systemic problem that we're faced with, because I am serving communities of color. And the system has it that in this financial hardship, number one, the bonding capacity, I can't pass a bond. Most of the community I serve are renters. So the homeowners would vote for the bond, but they're going to pass that cost along to the renters, which increases the rent, which my families can't afford. So that isn't a possibility for us. So we have to look at issuing what's called a certificate of participation, a COP, or quite simply a mortgage on a public project. So that money, or that 60% of that bonding equity, comes out of my general fund for the next 30 years. And that equates to 2 teachers, 4 instructional assistants, a bus. That cost that's coming out of the general funds that's meant for day-to-day operations is coming out of the facility just so we can meet those needs. But in addition to that, the state's going to allocate you money based on, as John alluded earlier, an archaic system of a formula of how many students you are currently serving. And that formula doesn't match like the class size reduction that we're required to do in the K-3. It's actually more of a 27-to-1 ratio. So the formula doesn't match necessarily what we're required to implement in our schools. But when you receive that amount, because your financial hardship, if your construction costs exceed the allocation, then the state comes in and says, wait a second, you went over what we allocated you. Therefore, the money that you contributed because you went over what we did, you have to pay us back as a state. So therefore, if they allocated me, say, $10 million for a project, and the project actually cost $12 million, we came up with somehow magically another $2 million. The state says, I need my $2 million back. Therefore, it cost me $4 million. So the system says you cannot go above there. We cannot build an actual adequate school facility on the allocation that has been given to us. And the state admits this. We're not going to give you what it costs. Our project is not based on the actual costs that you're facing. It's a formula driven. So therefore, the system says in this racially diverse community that is socioeconomically poor, you cannot build a better system or a better school facility, or otherwise the penalties are too high for you. So the proof is actually there that it is a systemic racial inequity. For me, what we're trying to do is to meet those needs, to build a facility that actually can serve it, is we've tried to be creative. So I actually serve as the general contractor for our particular district that we're required to rebuild. Now that will save us close to about 10% of the actual cost in the scope, but I didn't go to school to be a general contractor. They don't teach you how to be a general contractor in principal school. And so the impact for me is I don't get to spend as much time in the classroom or with kids. I'm out coordinating and I'm responsible for general conditions. So we just had, like you guys know, 4 inches of rain over the past week. I got to go figure out how to get those contractors back onto the site instead of in the classroom to serve my students' needs. But I don't get more money for that. We can't use any of these costs for administrative, any of the money from the state for facility for any administrative costs. So we've got this increased workload with no increased revenue system. So the system is broken. And I agree with the panelists, and I, again, thank you for your time.